Well, hello, and thank you for downloading another episode of Your Life Simplified. My name is George Fernandez, and I'll be the host of this episode. You know, when we work with clients, one of the topics of conversation that we always have with clients is preparing for college. And in fact, it's interesting, they often prioritize college as being more important than their own retirement, which is one thing that always kind of surprises me. And when I have those conversations with clients, one of the things that I've discovered in my experience is that there are really three fears that they have that kind of rise to the top of concern. And that is the college costs themselves, the being accepted into college of choice, graduating in 4 years while also having a great learning experience. And I know that was really important for my family, making sure our daughter, who went off to Minnesota, finished in 4 years was really important. To help us navigate these topics, we've invited our guest, Cozy Wittman from College Inside Track, to walk us through these issues. It'll be interesting to kind of hear her perspective and their experience over College Inside Track as to how they help clients address these three topics. And so, Cozy, I think maybe what I'd like to do is first thank you for being here, because I know this is a great opportunity for us, but it's also, I know it's a long trip down from St. Paul down here as well to have this conversation. So I really do appreciate that. What I think I'd like to do first is maybe have you introduce yourself and just kind of tell a little bit about your background, how you got started in this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having me first. I love chatting college, so I'm happy to be here. I am with College Inside Track, obviously, and I connected with them because I'm a mom of 5 and found myself in the position of searching for college, and I was not sure exactly how to launch that search. You know, do I put a map on the wall and start throwing darts at it? Like, how do we know where to start? So connected with them. They did amazing work for our family. I had very specific financial goals for college for my kids. And so they helped us meet those. And so I turned around and said, how can I help you guys grow? And here I am.
Wow. And that's great. So you know firsthand, with 5 children, you know firsthand what the process looks like. And I know I have 3 children myself, and we went through this process as well. I wish I had known you then. It would have been really nice to know that. So with your background in this space and understanding what this process looks like, I was really intrigued to find out that the approach that you all use and the 3 areas that you address when working with clients fit really well within what I have found to be the top 3 issues that our clients face. And you all describe this as financial fit, academic fit, and social fit, which is what we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. And so I don't even know where to start with this topic. I mean, we could really go anywhere, or even, I think even before our conversation today, we joked about this could be an all-day kind of podcast, but we know we only have a few minutes to do that. So we want to hit some of these topics really kind of head on. So with the first one on the topic is cost. When I think of cost, I can't help but think of a story that I heard my father-in-law tell me when we first met, 35 plus years ago. And he tells a story about when he graduated in the early 60s from medical school, he had $200 in his pocket and a new brown suit. I used to joke with him about whether the story was about the suit, because brown was his favorite color, or it was a $200. I think the point was he paid his own way through college, including medical school. And, I was really fortunate myself. I was able to pay my way through college as well. Now, it took me 8 years to do that, but I was able to pay for my own college along the way. And that is not a luxury that students have today, it seems. I know with the cost of college, it just doesn't seem like that's even possible. So what's the state of college cost, and why isn't that possible as easily as it was 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's it's an area of huge misconception, I think, for families. And a great place to start. College has shifted significantly, right? The increases in the cost of attendance over the last 30 years, on average nationally, have gone up about 215% for public universities, but there are notable exceptions, and those are the big dog, big state universities that people know and love. Maybe most notably, Missouri has gone up 641%, their increase in tuition over the last 30 years. Michigan's gone up 1,047%. Wisconsin's gone up 1,053%. Texas has gone up 439%. So these increases have outpaced your salary or my salary for sure. Salaries haven't kept up at that rate over the last 30 years, right?
My salary is certainly not 1,000%. Or
exactly.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
From college, maybe.
Right? From when I was at my first high school job, maybe.
Yeah. But the other thing that has shifted or changed is that the average, the percentage of college cost that the federal student loan program covers is significantly less today. So it used to be if you took out a student loan, it covered a much larger percentage of your overall cost of attendance than it does today. And then the other kind of big factor is that the FAFSA formula that determines whether or not a family has need or no need now includes a much larger percentage of the family's income as part of that formula. And so fewer and fewer families are need-based. The student loan programs cover less, and the tuition increases have outpaced most of our abilities, right? So when you think about the average big public university costing somewhere in the $20,000 to $25,000 range, imagine some part-time job that a full-time student could take on and earn $25,000, right?
Exactly.
So it's just challenging, right? And the last time most parents were actually thinking or looking at colleges was 15 to 20 years ago, right? And so things have shifted significantly in those 2 decades.
Yeah, that just amazes me as you went through those numbers, and I'm here 1,053, 1,047, 641. It just amazes me how much they've gone up. And maybe said another way, the college or the federal government doesn't cover as much as a percentage. It sounds to me like we're also saying that it's paying very much what it paid 20 years ago as well. Right. So it hasn't increased or with the inflation of college expenses as rapidly as the college cost has.
That's right.
So proportionally, it's not covering it. So the federal government might argue that, well, we're paying what we've been paying. That's the problem, right?
Right, right. That's right. It's just a bigger burden on
the student. It's just a bigger burden. So that's really incredible. And I think that in talking with parents, it often comes up that, that they don't even apply for financial aid because they feel like, well, I'm not going to get, I'm not going to be able to anyway because I make too much money.
That's right.
What's the conversation sound like when you start having that conversation about, well, I'm not going to apply for student aid because I won't qualify, so why bother?
Yeah, so I think it's important to distinguish the 2 kinds of aid available to families who are going off to college. One is need-based aid, and people get super mired in that need-based world and really think heavily about whether or not we're going to be need-based, and if we move money, will we be need-based, right? And the fact remains that you will either be perceived by the colleges as need-based or not need-based or some in between, right? But there's not a lot you can do to shift that around. So the other pool of money available to students who are going off to college is based on merit aid. And merit is all things amazing and wonderful about the student, right? The clubs they participate in, the work that they do, the higher level coursework that they're doing in high school now, right? Kids can take on college level work in high school. And all of those things pull together to make them a student that colleges are interested in having on their campuses. And so when families kind of come forward and say to us, well, we're not going to be need-based, so we're not going to fill out the FAFSA and we're not going to do this. The fact remains there's some lack of predictability in whether or not you will be need-based or not. Okay. It is a scale from 100% need to 100% merit, right? And most people fall somewhere in between.
Okay.
And that lack of predictability is one of the reasons that we just suggest people fill out the FAFSA. It is also the application for the student loan program. So if loans are going to be part of that process, you have to fill it out. And then some schools, because they are interested in families' financial data for the purposes of who will be our next great contributors to our endowment, are interested in that information and sometimes bolster their merit packages just because you filled out your FAFSA. So there are lots of good reasons to do it, and so we just encourage families to do it.
That's real interesting. So you fill out the FAFSA even if you're not getting student aid, financial aid.
Right.
But because you filled it out, because you represent someone they want to have there, the fact that you filled it out, there's actually some kind of, I don't want to say reward. That's probably not the right word.
Yeah, a little bit.
But there's kind of a reward that they provide you on the merit-based scholarship that they're going to be providing, saying, okay, well, you filled this out. Now we know this about you. So here's another $1,000, another $1,800 off your merit aid.
That's
package.
right.
It's very interesting.
And because you can't predict that piece of it, colleges don't advertise that piece.
Sure.
We just encourage families to do it.
Because you don't know when or if they will.
That's correct.
Right. So why not?
That's right.
That's what it comes down to. Okay. Well, that kind of leads us into the second, piece there, which is the academic side, that's getting into college of choice. My student has been a 4.0 student, or 4.3 or whatever, and they're valedictorian. So I've picked all these schools, these Ivy League schools or whatever, as to where my student's going to go. That may or may not be the best way of approaching that, if it
That's
sounds
correct.
like.
That's correct. So we encourage families to really think through, what is the right academic fit for my student, both majors and rigor? What is the right social fit for my student? And those are things like distance from home and size of school and what activities are involved at the school. And then what's the right financial fit for the family? And you have to include all three of those things. When we present that information to families, it's an equilateral triangle, right? All three of those areas need to be there for it to be right fit for the student, because it doesn't do you any good, for instance, to go off to that Ivy League school if your family can't afford it and you end up taking on tons of debt for them to be there. There are more than 3,000 universities in the U.S. Tons of those schools will be right fit. Tons of those schools are going to give your kid a great education. So really breaking down your goals in those three different areas, right? It's going to be academic fit if your student, for instance, GPA and ACT score, or just GPA in some cases, right? A lot of schools aren't even using ACT or SAT scores as part of their entrance criteria. If your student is slightly above that incoming average, it's going to be a great academic fit for them. And assuming that they have some of the majors that your student is interested in, with some level of elbow room for changing majors, because all students do.
That's a real interesting point. So if you have a student who is let's say a 3.8 student, gets a 24, 25 on their scores, and they're applying to a school that really looking for a 32, they're going to struggle getting in. So finding a school that would fit that kind of picture, if you will, that profile, I think it's a really powerful thing to consider, that there may be a lot of schools out there that are looking for a student like that.
That's
That's what you're saying.
And today, and families don't know this either, how you tell your story matters as much as your numbers on a piece of paper. There are more than 1,000 schools today, as mentioned, in the country that don't use SAT or ACT scores as part of their entrance criteria. So if you have a really sharp student with strong test anxiety, right, or maybe who just didn't have a great performance on the ACT or SAT, right, then you just change your strategy to go and look for schools that just look at the transcript, right? And families, by the way, can find that full list of who does not use test at fairtest.org. And you'll find the full list of schools who aren't using its standardized testing any longer.
Okay, that is a great piece of information, because some students do have test anxiety, and it doesn't matter whether you take it 1 or 10 times, the results aren't going to be that much different because of that anxiety. In fact, I would argue that the more often they take it and the more times they take it, the anxiety gets even worse, right? So
that's right.
That's really important.
Thanks again for downloading this episode of Your Life Simplified, which is produced by Mariner Wealth Advisors. And at Mariner Wealth Advisors, we're here to serve as your advocate. We help people chart a course to reach their personal and financial goals so that they can have greater peace of mind that may lead to a more fulfilling life. We do this by always putting our clients first. Because as fiduciaries, we're required to provide guidance that's in the best interest of clients, not in the best interest of a company or shareholders or anyone else. So as you listen to this podcast and have questions about maybe your own financial situation, or would simply like a second opinion, or even you have an idea for a future podcast, please go ahead and email us at podcast@marinerwealthadvisors.com. If you found the information on this podcast valuable, please go ahead and share it with a friend or family member that you think might benefit from this information. And please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and now back to the episode.
Are there other types of merit that people don't consider often that they should consider?
Yeah, let me take a step back too and just talk a little bit about merit aid. So merit aid, when people think about college and how to pay for college, they often think about grants and scholarships, right? But they don't think about colleges with grants and scholarships. They think about grants and scholarships. So they spend a lot of time and energy wandering through websites looking for private scholarships that are I have red hair, one blue eye, and I'm the middle kid scholarship, right? So kids spend a lot of energy searching for the right ones, writing the essays that go along with it to get themselves $150, right? And it just doesn't go very far to moving the college needle. And so what we encourage families to do is actually understand the colleges themselves. The colleges are giving away thousands and thousands of dollars if you know what you're doing. And so other areas that they're interested in, families can think about merit aid as the way that the colleges measure their own success. And what they do is use grants and scholarships to attract their strongest freshman class for the things that the college cares about this year. So for instance, often people, I'll encourage them to look out of state. And I get a lot of pushback on that, right? And they push back because out-of-state schools are very expensive. True, if you want to go to one of the big dog state universities out of state, are you going to pay $60,000, $65,000 for that experience? 100% you are. But there are a lot of state schools that, one, don't do out-of-state tuition, and private schools never did it. And private schools are big contributors, right? I want my best freshman class sitting here in the fall. And so they give away thousands of dollars. They bring themselves in at or below state school pricing often, if you're looking at the right colleges, right? So it's important for families to just understand that there's criteria out there that colleges are thinking about. Maybe your student is interested in a really interesting major at this college that doesn't have very many students. Colleges will pay a little bit of additional grant or scholarship money for that student to come because they need to build this major up, right? They may look for skill sets that the student has that are kind of unique and interesting. We had a student who played ultimate frisbee who got an additional $8,000 of academic aid at a private school for him to go off to play ultimate frisbee, right?
I would not have thought of that one.
Yeah. Tuba players, right? Flautists, everybody can carry that flute, man, but finding somebody who will carry that tuba around, right? State schools will give money away for that too. So it's a combination of things. By and large, families can think about state schools as giving money away for academics and some sports and some other activities, where private schools are really interested in a whole bunch of things, right? And again, how you tell your story and how often you're interacting with those schools matters very much.
Wow. And so location, I think you were sharing a story, if you could, again, about schools that want to have representation from every state, for example.
That's right.
And perhaps, maybe lost a couple in graduation, and maybe you just happen to be applying at the right time.
That's right. Well, you always increase, right, your ability if you are interesting and unique. 50% of kids go within 100 miles of their own home off to college, right? So you are automatically more interesting if you are stepping outside that boundary, right? And think about it this way. If you go out to any college website, doesn't matter which one it is, there is a picture on the homepage. And the picture is fall, beautiful leaf coloring, right? And a mix of men and women in multiple ethnicities, right? So college's demographic mix matters to them. And part of that demographic mix is where are our kids from? And they love to say, like, we have one kid from all 50 states and 37 countries around the world, right? And so it trickles down into the majors. If you are a man and interested in nursing, for instance, there's more merit money for you than women going into nursing today. If you are a woman and interested in the STEM fields, more money for you than men going into those today. So think about who the student is, and then think about how colleges benefit from that student is how families should be thinking about this.
It's a great point. And I didn't realize this until we had this conversation. Our youngest daughter went to school and majored in mathematics, and she got a great scholarship because so few women actually go into that field. And so I didn't quite understand why her scholarship seemed so much better than we expected. I'm not complaining, mind you. I'm not complaining at all. But that now I understand, that was a field where they wanted representation.
That's right.
And that's one of the ways that they do that. So that's
right.
a really great point. So kind of moving into we kind of talked about finances. We talked a little bit about the merit side and kind of the academic side, kind of shifting gears and talking about the social side, graduating in 4 years, having a great experience, the social side being a really important piece of that. But I would imagine schools look at the student's ability to graduate as also being an important piece of that too. So when they bring a student in and they give them the merit aid, and like you said earlier, they want them to represent the successfulness of the school, because if they don't graduate, that looks poorly on the school too, doesn't it?
That's right. Yeah, schools measure their 4-year and 6-year graduation rates, right? So they are encouraged to get kids out, but I think it's important for families to poke at schools, right? Because not all schools have great 4-year graduation rates. And if your financial strategy is based on the idea that my student is going to get in here and out of here in 4 years, you're going to want to know what that 4-year graduation rate looks like, and why don't kids graduate in 4 years at your university? I think that families need to think through this aspect of we get super hyper focused on the idea of, will my kid get in, right? Will my kid get in? And people don't step beyond that acceptance piece to say, what's the experience going to be like? What's the likelihood that this school is going to get my kid out in 4 years? What's the likelihood that my student is going to get help finding an internship and then a job, right? So families should be interviewing these schools as much as they perceive the schools are interviewing them, because at the end of the day, you are paying for this experience. And you want to get the most out of that experience as you can. So thinking through things like, how far from home is the student comfortable? What size school feels good to me? And the only way students are going to start to know that is by touring. Thinking through the potential majors with the understanding that almost every student changes their major once during this college experience. Because you are going to be a person as well as a student on this campus. What other activities are important to me? What else would I like to try while I'm in college? And so taking it a step beyond, gosh, I hope I get in, to I want to make sure this is a great experience for me as a person and a student.
It's a really great point. And so how important do college visits before you make a selection, or before you finally accept, I should say, maybe even before applying? How important is that?
Super important. So colleges do track how often they interact with students. It's a category called demonstrated interest. For stronger merit schools, so schools giving away merit money in the form of a grant or scholarship, that interactive piece, very important, right? Because if I'm a college admissions counselor and I have some money that I'm going to give away, am I more likely to give it to the student that I've talked to a couple times? I know they've been to my college. They came to our alumni event when we were in town. They stopped by our table at the college fair. Or am I going to give it to the student who just applied to my school? And I never talked to them. We never saw them, right? So as a college admissions person, I'm going to give more money to the kids that I perceive are coming because I want to try and get them in the door and in a chair, right? That's my goal.
That's real interesting. So not only is a student gaining a better cultural understanding of the school by visiting and getting a lay of the land and looking at the city that it's in, there's also a financial component of that too. Because of your demonstrated interest, they actually are saying, because you're demonstrating your interest, we have this initial carrot for you.
That's right.
To consider us when we do create an offer for you.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll create a better offer along
That's
the
right.
way. Very interesting. I know when our daughter, we were looking through schools, the cultural component was really important for her. And so we did visit schools. And we actually visited a school, and it sounded great on the paper. It just looked great on the website, great in the conversations. But our actual visit to the school, as we walked around and interacted with the students, and I won't say what school that was, we discovered that it really wasn't going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
And it really didn't match up with all the stuff they had on their site, which was real interesting. So there was a disconnect. And my daughter recognized that, and she said, "This is a beautiful location. I'd love to be here for that. And the learning process sounds really cool, but culturally, it just doesn't feel right."
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I think for us, it was important for us to visit the school. But I hadn't considered the financial side of it. So that's, like I said, I wish I'd known all this stuff back then.
Yeah, it's fun because it's all really merged together, right? The academic, social, and financial pieces really are pulled together and they're woven into each other. And so I think it's important, for instance, for families to have a budget and understand, like, what can we afford for school? And it's tricky to do, I think, and it's hard. There are aspects of this that are not transparent to families, right? So it's hard to predict that merit aid package and what it might look like, but you can certainly play the odds.
Thanks again, Cozy. These are all really great reminders as we talked beforehand. As I said before many times, I wish I had known this when my kids were going to school, but it's great to have somebody that we can lean on when we have these kinds of questions. As we kind of pull things together for the end of the recording today, can you just quick reminder what some of those really quick hits are of what we can do to kind of simplify the process?
Yeah, so there's some things that all families should be thinking about, right? Again, diving into academic, social, and financial fit, right? Creating a budget for yourselves for college is important, and having that discussion with your student, right? This is what we can afford to have for school. Then cast a wide net. Families, all too often, I find families narrowing their search super early to a very limited pool of schools. Cast a wide net because you don't know what the schools are going to be offering. You can ask schools if they give merit aid or don't give merit aid, right? And so if you're a family whose strategy is, I need merit aid as part of this package so we can afford college, don't apply to the schools, right, that don't give merit aid. We recommend that families apply to 6 to 10 schools. And sometimes families ask me very specifically, like, that's going to be a lot of money in application fees. You can ask schools for a waiver, right? You don't get what you don't ask for. So, and there is also a day in the fall, every fall, that's free. And so you can apply to any school in the country for free. Know that. Yeah. A lot of times people think of the essay as an afterthought, right? And it is not. Some schools will pay up to $9,000 of additional merit aid in the grant or scholarship packages for a well-written essay.
And that's 9 times 4, correct?
Times 4, that's right. So it's real cash for an essay, and it doesn't have to be an essay about moving mountains, right? It just is unique to the student, an essay that no other student could have written. It's tricky for kids, but it can be done. A lot of families don't know that you can negotiate your financial award. Now, you have to have the right schools on the list, and traditionally state schools do not do this. But you can go back to a school and say, here was my hope for number. Are you going to help me get there? Because again, you are paying for this experience. And then my biggest tip to families, because sadly, too often they come to me way too late in the process for any of these strategies to be helpful, start early. We recommend spring of sophomore year. It gives you time to really think through what is right fit for us, to start to develop that budget. If a student is going to take and retake the ACT a couple of times, it takes time to get that done and to do the prep that's in between. And to do some planning in high school for what colleges really will help me most in high school. And so kids and families should be starting early. You don't have to dive into like the super hyper drive, right, in sophomore year. But starting to think through this and getting a game plan pulled together, we really recommend.
So college visits this in the spring break of senior year is too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Little late.
A little late there. Good to know. Okay. Well, again, I would just want to say thank you so much for sharing all this insight. So how can you help? How does your firm help?
Yeah, College Insight Track helps families really identify right fit schools, and then we get them through the essay and application process, helping the student really put their best voice on those applications. Lots of coaching behind the scenes as the student is developing that college list and honing in on right fit schools, helping kind of coach them through, how much interaction should you have or not have based on what your list looks like. And then helping families really understand those financial packages when they come back. So we dive most deeply into those academic, social, and financial goals for the family. We help them do the right things at the right time to get the right results that they are looking for. And we actually, after the student graduates high school, we stay with our students. So if they need help once they're in their undergrad programs, something they don't understand, something they don't know how to navigate, they can always reach back. But primarily, we help families navigate the entire college search process. And you might not be surprised as a parent that sometimes having a neutral third party is helpful because kids don't always think that their parents know everything.
Yes, I will agree with that. We'll leave it there. Well, thanks again, Cozy, for sharing this information. As you pointed out, the most important thing, the big picture, is creating a strategy. So that we're not saying something later, I wish I knew then what I know now, which is what I kept saying through this entire conversation, it seems. So with that said, let's look at your own personal financial decision. We ask all of our guests when they come onto the podcast, what's your worst financial decision? How would you answer that question?
That's easy. So a brand new grad living in California, first studio apartment, got my first credit card, and was getting ready to shop for Christmas. And I thought, this is awesome. There's a card and I can just buy stuff randomly. And I ended up, of course, charging myself way up. So my credit card debt was quite high my first 2 years post-college. It took me a long time to beat that down. I for sure would like now me to talk to then me and keep that away.
That's great. You're right. I think we all have probably done something like that. So it's great to have those reminders, right?
Yeah.
For each of us. Well, thanks again for being here, and we appreciate your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
We know that your time is incredibly valuable, and we hope you find this podcast a worthwhile investment of your time. Thank you for listening.
Mariner LLC, doing business as Mariner Wealth Advisors, or MWA, is an SEC registered investment advisor. Registration of an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. MWA is in compliance with the current notice filing requirements imposed upon registered investment advisors by those states in which MWA maintains clients. MWA may only transact business in those states in which a notice has been filed or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from notice filing requirements. Any subsequent direct communication by MWA with a prospective client shall be conducted by a representative that is either registered or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from registration in the state where the prospective client resides. For additional information about MWA, including fees and services, please contact MWA or refer to the Investment Advisor Public Disclosure website at www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.